The bridge of the Vengeance Unbroken smelled like burnt ozone and fear. Fleet Admiral Threx Calvorn of the Sundrath Imperium gripped the arms of his command throne, so hard his talons cracked the ceramic plating. On the viewscreen before him, 17 Sundrath dreadnoughts hung in formation above the human colony world of Verity's Rest. An armada that had, 3 hours earlier, been the most feared sight in the Perseus Arm. Now every single one of his warriors was laughing, not screaming, not dying, laughing. "Report," Threx hissed, though he already knew the answer would make no sense. His tactical officer, a Sundrath named Vesic with scales gone pale gray from shock, stared at the sensor readout like it had betrayed him personally. "Admiral, the human defense fleet, 12 ships. 12 against our 17. They should have fled, they should have begged for terms, and they laughed at us, Admiral, on an open channel. Then they opened fire, and every shot they fired missed on purpose. They're toying with us." Threx's blood ran cold beneath his scales, because he understood, in that moment, that something had gone catastrophically wrong 3 days ago, and none of them had noticed until it was far too late. 3 days earlier, the Sundrath Imperium had ruled 11,000 star systems for over 600 years through a single, simple doctrine. Fear ends resistance before resistance begins. Every first contact followed the same script: arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate power, watch the natives break. It had worked on the Chelvaxi, it had worked on the Orn Collective. It had worked on 41 other species who now paid tribute to the Imperium and thanked their conquerors for the privilege of survival. So when Imperial scouts discovered the human colony of Verity's Rest, a modest agricultural world with a population of 600,000, and a defense fleet that looked, by any sane measurement, laughably outmatched, Grand Marshal Yeth Ordanis had seen no reason to deviate from doctrine. 17 dreadnoughts, Yeth had told the Imperial War Council, his voice thick with satisfaction. Against a species that has been in space for less than 2 centuries, this will be the fastest capitulation in Imperium history. Councilwoman Prel Ashenvale, the only member present who had actually read the intelligence reports rather than skimmed them, cleared her throat. "Grand Marshal, there is a detail in the human file that concerns me." "Go on." "Their military doctrine documents, the ones our listening posts intercepted, contain a recurring phrase our translators cannot fully parse. It appears to be idiomatic. Something they call the element of surprise." Yeth had waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Every species believes its own cleverness will save it. Humans will be no different." Councilwoman Ashenvale had not been reassured, but she was overruled, as she usually was, and the fleet departed within the hour. Aboard Verity's Rest, Fleet Captain Elena Reyes stood in the observation deck of her flagship, the Steadfast Promise, watching 17 Sundrath dreadnoughts materialize on her long-range sensors like a wall of thunderclouds rolling in from the dark. Her XO, a wiry man named Marcus Webb, who had not slept properly in 2 days, appeared at her shoulder with a tablet full of numbers that all said the same thing: "We lose." 17 to 12, Marcus said quietly. "Their tonnage alone is triple ours. If this goes conventional, we don't have a fleet by tomorrow morning." "Good thing it's not going to be conventional," Elena said. Marcus studied her face. He'd served under her for 6 years, through the Belt Uprising and the Meridian Blockade, and he knew that particular calm in her eyes. It wasn't confidence born of arrogance, it was confidence born of a plan already 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the room. "You've got something," he said. "I've got everything," Elena replied. "Get me Colonel Ashworth on the ground, and pull up everything we have on Sundrath sensor doctrine. I want to know exactly what they can see, and exactly what they can't." But no one expected what happened next. Colonel Ashworth arrived on the bridge 12 minutes later, still in the mud-streaked fatigues of a ground drill he'd cut short. He was a broad, quiet man who had commanded planetary defense on 3 different worlds before Verity's Rest, and he did not waste words. "You're going to use the platforms," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm going to use everything," Elena said. "Ashworth, I need confirmation the strike array is still fully dark. If the Sundrath so much as suspect there's live hardware in that asteroid belt, the whole plant collapses before it starts." Dark as the day we buried them, Ashworth confirmed. Passive thermal only, no active pinging, no telemetry bursts. As far as any scanner in the galaxy is concerned, that belt is nothing but rock and ice. Marcus frowned at the tactical display, where the 17 incoming Sundrath signatures glowed a hostile amber. And if they send scouts to the belt directly, physical inspection? They won't, Elena said. Because the Imperium doesn't scout, they've never had to. 600 years of conquest taught them that showing up is the scouting. She tapped the display and a soft green outline traced the coming battle lines. That arrogance is the only weapon we need. It was a strange thing, Marcus thought, to watch his captain plan a battle with the calm of someone arranging furniture. But that was Elena Reyes. She did not fight wars so much as she solved them, one assumption at a time, and the Sundrath had handed her more assumptions than she knew what to do with. The princess had overlooked one crucial detail. Not that there was a princess aboard the Vengeance Unbroken. But there might as well have been one, in the person of Sub-Commander Zayla Calvorn, Threx's own daughter, newly assigned to her father's flagship as tactical liaison. Zayla had grown up on stories of imperial conquest, had memorized the campaign records of 43 subjugated worlds, before she was old enough to hold a rifle, and she believed, with the total conviction of the young, that the Imperium's power was simply a fact of the universe. Like gravity, she stood at her station now, watching the human colony grow larger on the viewport, and felt nothing but impatience. Father, why do we hold at this range? Advance and let them see the full weight of the fleet. Fear does the rest, because, Threx said, not unkindly, the intelligence reports troubled Councilwoman Ashenvale. I choose to be cautious rather than sorry. Ashenvale worries about ghosts, Zayla said. There is no species in this galaxy that has stood against 17 dreadnoughts and lived to speak of it. She would remember those words, later, with considerably less certainty. What the Sundrath Imperium did not know, could not know, because it had never occurred to their military doctrine to check, was that human colonies on the frontier did not build their defenses the way the Imperium expected. 600 years of Sundrath conquest had trained every subject species to build bigger ships, thicker armor, more guns. Escalation as a language everyone understood. Humans, still bruised from their own century of devastating wars back on Earth, had learned a different lesson entirely. That the biggest gun in the room isn't always the one that wins. Verity's Rest had been quietly retrofitting its defense fleet for 8 months, ever since long-range scouts first detected unusual Sundrath probe activity at the system's edge. Elena Reyes, who had spent the last 3 years studying every scrap of intelligence humanity had gathered on the Imperium's conquest pattern, had made one observation that changed everything. The Sundrath always announced themselves. Every single first contact in their history had opened with an overwhelming, visible show of force, broadcast wide, meant to be seen and feared. They had never once needed a plan for what happened if the enemy wasn't afraid, so Elena had built one. The 12 ships of the Verity's Rest defense fleet were not in fact 12 ships. They were 4 real warships and 8 decoys, drone hulls fitted with sensor spoofing arrays that made them read as full-strength vessels on Sundrath scanners, while their actual weapons systems were a fraction of what the sensors claimed. It was an old trick, ancient even, but it worked precisely because the Sundrath had never needed to look twice at an enemy before. And hidden in the debris field of Verity's Rest's outer asteroid belt, officially charted as mining hazards, unofficially seeded there over months by unmarked cargo runs, sat 43 automated strike platforms, dormant, dark, and utterly invisible to anything but a physical inspection. The Council had made a terrible mistake. The battle, when it came, unfolded exactly as Grand Marshal Yeth Ordonis expected. For the first 4 minutes, the Sundrath fleet advanced in perfect formation, broadcasting the traditional surrender ultimatum on all channels, a recording of Yeth's own voice promising mercy to those who yielded, and annihilation to those who resisted. The human fleet held position, weapons dark, exactly as every conquered species before them had done, in the moment before their will broke. Then Elena Reyes's voice came through on an open channel. And it was not afraid, It was amused. "Grand Marshal Ordonis," she said, "on behalf of the colony of Verity's Rest, I regret to inform you that we've heard this speech before. Different aliens, same script. You're going to want to check your sensor logs from about 90 seconds ago." Yeth had ordered the diagnostic out of pure irritation, expecting nothing. What his tactical officers found instead made his blood run cold. 43 weapon signatures, previously undetected, now active across the asteroid field, flanking his entire fleet on both sides. Not decoys. Not bluffs. Real, targeted and already locked. Aboard the Vengeance Unbroken, Zayla Calvorn stared at the same readout, and felt the certainty of a lifetime crack open beneath her feet. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Nothing organic has read on our long-range scans since we entered the system." "Nothing." "They weren't organic," her father said grimly. "They were waiting." Everything changed in the next few seconds. The first volley from the strike platforms didn't hit hulls. It hit engines, precise, surgical strikes designed to cripple mobility, without triggering the kind of catastrophic damage that would kill crews. 3 Sundrath dreadnoughts went dead in space within the opening exchange, venting drive plasma, utterly unable to maneuver. Then the human 12 ships opened fire, and Yeth discovered the second half of the trap. The 4 real warships, no longer needing to hide their true capability, revealed weapons systems built for exactly this scenario. Ships designed not to slug it out toe-to-toe with a superior force, but to isolate, disable, and dismantle it piece by piece. Within 11 minutes, 6 Sundrath dreadnoughts were dead in space, not destroyed. Elena had been explicit about that in every briefing. Disabled, crews alive. A message, not a massacre. Nobody knew what the human was hiding. Aboard the Vengeance Unbroken, Threx Calvorn watched his fleet come apart around him and understood, with the particular clarity that comes only in the final moments before defeat, that the Imperium's entire doctrine had been built on a single unexamined assumption. That fear was the only language power spoke. "Signal the human flagship," he said, voice hollow. "Full surrender terms. On the steadfast promise." Elena received the surrender request, and did something that would be studied by Sundrath historians for the next century. She declined the crew's unconditional capitulation, and instead requested a diplomatic exchange. "We don't want your surrender, Admiral Calvorn," she said, once the channel opened and his shaken face appeared on her screen. "We want a conversation. Your empire has been telling conquered worlds for 600 years that resistance is impossible. We'd like you to go home and tell them something different." Threx stared at her, scales prickling with an emotion he didn't have a word for. Not quite shame, not quite respect, something new born in the space between them. "You could have destroyed us." "We could have," Elena agreed. "We chose not to. That's the part you're going to want to think about on the way home." The truth stunned the entire galaxy. The story of Verity's Rest spread through Imperium space faster than any sensor could contain it. Not because humans broadcast it themselves, but because 6,000 Sundrath crew members, who had expected annihilation and received mercy instead, could not stop talking about it. Word reached the Chelvaxi. It reached the Orn Collective. It reached 41 subject species who had spent 6 centuries believing resistance was a fantasy, and who now had proof, however small, that it wasn't. Grand Marshal Yeth Ordonis was recalled to the imperial capital in disgrace. Councilwoman Prel Ashenvale, whose warnings had gone unheeded, was elevated to lead a newly formed diplomatic division, one tasked, for the first time in Imperium history, with actually studying the species it encountered, instead of simply cataloging their military tonnage. And on Verity's Rest, Elena Reyes stood again on the observation deck of the Steadfast Promise, watching the last Sundrath ships limp away under tow, her XO beside her. "They'll be back," Marcus said, "someday. With a fleet that's actually learned something." "I'm counting on it," Elena said. "Because next time, they won't come looking for someone to conquer. They'll come looking for someone to talk to. That's the whole point, Marcus. We didn't win by being stronger. We won by making them think." Far above the colony, the wreckage of the Imperium's certainty drifted silently into the dark, carrying home a lesson 600 years in the making. That an empire built on fear can survive almost anything except the day its enemies stop being afraid and start laughing instead.